All right, let's dive right into one of the biggest questions you can possibly ask. Is our reality, the real thing, or is it more like a program being run? Today, we're going to explore some absolutely mind-bending science that suggests the code of life and maybe the universe itself can be rewritten.
So, we all learn in school to think of DNA as this fixed blueprint for life, right? A super strict set of instructions that builds an organism from the ground up. But what if that's not the whole story? What if it's something way, way different?
Just imagine for a second that your DNA isn't the book itself, but it's the library card. It's the key that lets an organism check out books from this vast, pre-existing library of potential shapes, forms, and solutions. A space of possibilities that exists kind of outside our normal idea of space-time.
Now, I know this sounds like sci-fi, but it's not. It's actually grounded in some really startling experiments that are shaking up the core of biology. So let's look at the evidence, at life literally improvising and pulling from that hidden library. Okay, get this. The biologist Michael Levin and his lab have been doing some wild stuff. By basically tweaking the bioelectric fields that guide how things develop, they got tadpoles to grow eyes on their tails. They even took skin cells, put them in a dish, and watched them self-organize into completely new little creatures that call xenobots. And here's the real kicker. These forms have zero evolutionary history. They were never in the genetic script. It really suggests that DNA is crucial, yeah, but it's not the only author of life's story.
So if these new forms aren't coming from the DNA, where on earth are they coming from? Well, Levin has this idea he calls the morphospace. Think of it like a platonic realm, this huge landscape of all possible biological shapes and solutions that life can just tap into when it needs to. It's the library of what could be.
And this, of course, opens up a massive philosophical can of worms. If this morphospace is real, are we just puppets? Are our bodies nothing more than thin interfaces, like terminals just executing designs from some kind of disembodied cosmic brain? Or is there something else going on?
This really gives us two very different ways to look at things. On one hand, you have the puppeteer model, which sees us as passive bodies just receiving pre-written code from on high. But there's a much more empowering view, right? One that sees us as companions, as active agents making decisions, choosing which of those possibilities to pull into reality. It's the difference between just running a program and actually helping to write it.
That whole puppet theory has a fundamental flaw. The philosopher Alfred North Whitehead pointed this out ages ago, calling it the fallacy of misplaced concreteness. Basically, when we give all the power, all the agency to these abstract patterns and just treat living bodies like passive vessels, we're completely missing the point. The action, the real decision-making, it's all happening right here, inside the organism.
Okay, so what if this space of possibilities isn't just a thing for biology? Some physicists and computer scientists are starting to think a very similar idea could be the foundation for, well, our entire universe.
And this leads us to the concept of the Roolead, an idea from Stephen Wolfram. It's like the ultimate upgrade to the morphospace. It's a theoretical object that contains all possible computations, every rule, every outcome. Our universe, with its very specific laws of physics, is just one program, one single path running inside this infinite computational landscape.
You can kind of break this down into 3 layers to make it easier to grasp. The Roolead is the fundamental hardware. The laws of our universe, that's the software that happens to be running right now. And our consciousness, our actual experience of reality, that's not the hardware itself. It's the dynamic process of the software in action. It's the friction of the calculation happening in the present moment.
So this brings us full circle, right back to our little xenobots and those tadpoles. If the whole universe is a computation, how are these organisms actively participating? How are they hacking the code to create something brand new? Whitehead actually gave us a fantastic word for this, ingression. Think of it as the moment of creation. It's that active, decisive process where a potential form gets pulled out of the space of possibilities and made real in the physical world. It doesn't just happen on its own. It has to be chosen by a living thing.
So what's in the organism's toolkit for all this? Well, those bioelectric fields that Michael Levin studies, they act like an API, a direct line for cells to communicate and call upon the morphospace. Organisms can literally feel which possibilities are the most relevant, almost like being pulled toward a potential future. They're not just blindly following code, they're actively metabolizing information and making decisions, writing their own story as they go.
So all of this leads to a pretty radical reframing of our place in the cosmos. We aren't just spectators watching some predetermined movie. We are active participants in this ongoing creative process.
And here's the bottom line, the most important takeaway. The script for reality, from the tiniest cell to the biggest galaxy, it isn't finished. It hasn't been written in advance.
Instead, it's a massive collaborative project. Every single decision made by every organism, every one of those moments of ingression, is another line of code, another sentence being written into the grand story of the universe. We are all co-authors.
And that leaves us with one final, and I think profound question. If reality isn't a fixed thing, but a dynamic process of creation, constantly drawing from an infinite well of potential, then what new possibilities will you, as an active agent in this whole thing, help bring into existence?